I spend time making movies for YouTube. The attention it gets is another thing I want to talk about. The number of people who follow this YouTube page has grown by about 12 million in just 18 months. Also, because some people take my work and post it on other sites. In the beginning of 2025, Luke Nichols had an event. His vids began to change. It looked like the happiness was fake. Those kids of his looked uncomfortable. Then came the news that broke the hearts of millions of people. Luke was taking some time away from boys outside for a while. Messages that got out, though, tell a different story. Friends say he was tired, stressed out, and having issues that he couldn't resolve on camera. The bad side of family fame is shown by the real reason he quit. And no one thought America's best outdoor dad would do that. His birth year was 1978, and he was born in Anchorage, Alaska. He felt at home in the wild right from the start. As a child, he lived near snowy mountains, dense woods, and rivers that were so cold they would freeze your breath away. He spent his childhood in the woods, where the only sounds were the sound of running water and boots on snow. He was fishing with his family before he could even remember. It is said that he joined the salmon and trout runs when he was very young. He learned how to fish from his dad, his grandfathers, and his older brother. They taught him how to hold a rod and feel with his hands how tight the line is. Luke knew how to catch Arctic char like it was nothing while other kids were learning how to play computer games. However, it wasn't just about getting fish. The wild places in Alaska taught him how to stay alive. It rained while he learned how to make a fire. He learned how to use twigs and snow to make a shelter. With a knife, he could go into the woods and come back safe and full. It was not practice. It was just life. Quickly, those around Luke saw that he was calm in a way that other people didn't. At that age, he was still the person you wanted around when it rained. Luke could put up a tent again while making jokes about dinner if it fell down in a snowstorm. He could still cook over a fire like it was nothing. But he did other things in his life besides being outside. Luke grew up in a home that had strong religious beliefs. Their faith was important to him, and they were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He made a choice at age 19 that changed everything. He left Alaska in 1997 and flew around the world to Japan, not for fun but for a 2-year stint. At first, everything was strange. A new language, a new way of life, and a new street. Luke changed, though. He didn't just make it through Japan. He grew up there. In the end, he said, those 2 years were the best of my life. He got better at Japanese. He made friends. He shared his beliefs with others. And somewhere along the way, he gained more security that would last with him forever. He went into the unknown and made it feel like home. He didn't go back to Alaska right away after coming back to the US in the late 1990s. Instead, he went to Utah around the year 2000 and started at Brigham Young University. It was yet another mountain scene. This time, though, it was all about books and ideas. There were people who knew him who thought he had become just a man of ideas after studying political science. Luke was still the same person who liked being outside. He went into rivers and canyons on the weekends while other students hung out in bookstores. He still did things like go fly fishing and camping every day. He found a balance between school and the quiet call of nature. After that, something went wrong and changed everything again. He met Rebecca at a church event in Provo. She had the same strong faith in God as he did and was smart and focused. Their link wasn't loud, but it was real. They talked about life, thoughts, and what was important. With all of his stories and scars from living in the wild, Luke finally met someone who saw more than just the wild man. They saw the soul behind it. Rebecca had her own hopes and dreams, and she would go on to have a successful job. But back then, she and Luke were just two kids trying to figure out what they wanted to do with their lives. As their friendship grew, it became clear that they were meant to be on that road together. Luke had earned his degree by the early 2000s. They got married soon after and began building a life that would include family, business, and trips that millions of people would share with them. Luke Nichols was full of energy and thoughts right after getting his degree in political science. It wasn't in his dreams yet to go camping or fish. In the early 2000s, not long after he graduated, he went straight into politics. He began running his own political consulting business and helping politicians with their campaigns. This was brave of a man in his 20s, but it worked. Luke had worked on about 20 projects in just 3 years. Some were races in the area. Some may have gotten to posts at the state level. He was always in charge of people, making plans, and working hard to help other people win. He was very focused and worked hard. He was good at planning things and could handle the stress that came with running for office. But the harsh truths of that world began to wear him down. In the end, Luke said that the job was taking all of his energy away. It wasn't just the long hours, the whole place was awful. It seemed like he was always on the phone, always on the road, and always stressed. The government didn't stop, and he couldn't either. Luke had just married at that point. Becky, his wife, was with him, and the two of them were beginning to think about the future, maybe even starting a family. But it began to seem impossible to raise kids and work 100-hour weeks in a world full of stress. Luke didn't like where this path was going. He then made a big choice. His business was shut down. Luke Nichols quit his job after 3 hard years of fighting political fights and winning elections. Failure was not it. It was clear. He understood that his beliefs didn't match the way of life that politics required. He decided to get married and start a family over fame and quick success. Luke and Rebecca packed up their lives in Utah and moved to Virginia around the middle of the 2000s. It was a new start. And not by chance. Luke had decided what to do. He planned to study law again. He wasn't going to give up on making a change. Just something better, something that wouldn't hurt his peace or the people he cared about. Luke Nichols moved to Virginia for more than just school around 2005. It was a new start. He went to the School of Law at George Mason University, which later changed its name to the Antonin Scalia Law School. He taught himself a lot about the law, especially criminal law, over the next 3 years. The school was just outside of Washington, D.C., so Luke was close to a lot of legal activity. And that made it possible for him to learn and get better. As of 2008, he had gotten his Juris Doctor. It was a big deal. Luke didn't waste any time after getting his law degree. He quickly opened his own law firm after passing the bar test. He chose to stay in Northern Virginia with his wife Rebecca. It was close to the city but far enough away to be quiet. Luke worked hard at criminal defense and learned a lot about traffic law. Getting speeding tickets, DUIs, and other driving-related charges kept him busy all day. Some people might have thought it was boring compared to the crazy outdoor adventures he would become famous for, but Luke didn't see it that way. He studied every little rule and paid close attention to every little thing. This helped him become one of the best at what he did. The word got around. His list of clients grew. Being more well-known helped him get what he needed most at the time: security. He and Rebecca bought a house in the country of Virginia with their steady income. It wasn't busy. It was quiet. There was room to breathe. It was just what they needed to start a family. Thomas, their first boy, was born around 2012 or 2013. They love calling him Tommy. Luke was very happy. After a few years, Nathan, or Nate, came along. Jake, the youngest of the 3, came next. Luke and Rebecca were thrilled to have 3 boys by the middle of the 2010s. There were lots of toys, noise, bedtime stories, and laughs in their house. And they didn't know it, but they were setting the groundwork for the Outdoor Boys, a group that would later become famous. Luke had a lot to do. He was a well-known and respected lawyer who always wore a suit to court and fought hard for his clients. Things changed when he got home, though. He changed into a dad who changed diapers. A dad who told his kids silly stories and took them on short fishing trips. The new house gave the kids a safe place to play, explore, and run around. She wasn't just building a house, either. She was making a name for herself in the business world. After that, she worked her way up to become the recognized and important director of education at the American Statistical Association in Washington, D.C. They both cared a lot about family, faith, and schooling. Every Sunday, they went to church. Evenings were full of fireflies, laughs, and fun things to do in the backyard. It all began around 2013. It was still Luke Nichols' full-time job as an attorney. His life was full. Because baby Tommy had just been born, there were tight deadlines, piles of paperwork, and all the normal chaos that comes with raising a newborn. Luke had always loved being outside, though, so he couldn't deal with all of that. He found a reason to get a rod, pack his gear, and head to the stream every weekend. Sometimes he did it by himself, and other times he brought a stroller with him. Then one day, something changed. He made the choice to record. His new YouTube account is called Catfish and Carp. There wasn't a big plan. There was only Luke, a simple setup, and the hope that someone would enjoy seeing him talk about tackle and catch fish. He knew what he wanted to do from the start. Large catfish. Very big carp. Luke loved those types of fish that most people didn't care about. He recorded himself putting out lines and showing how to use bait. And sometimes he was happy to just walk through the woods with his face dirty. In real life, he was a lawyer in a suit during the week, but online, he was just a guy in rubber boots smiling when a fish took his bait. The crowd slowly grew, but it wasn't because of the high-tech cams or smooth editing. It was because Luke seemed real. Even though his hands were dirty, his advice was good. His stories sounded like things your neighbor might say to you over the fence. Some people noticed. And in just a few years, Catfish and Carp had more than 100,000 members. YouTube mailed him the silver play button, and that's when Luke thought something bigger might be going on. Luke also saw that the channel wasn't growing as fast as it used to as time went on. It was fun to fish. It was a deep desire. But it was only a small part of YouTube. Growth had slowed by the middle of the 2010s, and Luke was thinking about more than just fish. Tommy and Nate, his two boys, were getting big very quickly. Their little boots kicked up dirt, chased frogs, and climbed rocks as they followed him around. Luke also thought of something else. He began to think about, what if there was more to the channel than fishing? What if it was about family? Imagine a story where kids learn how to roast marshmallows over a real fire and have fun. Luke and his wife Rebecca started a second YouTube account on May 5, 2015. The name of it was Outdoor Boys. There wasn't anything special about that first film. No exciting beginning. Doesn't promise much. Tommy and Nate were with Luke, Rebecca, and them as they walked through the woods. They went on hikes, camped, played in rivers, built boats, and even did some silly survival tricks to see what would happen. It all made sense. There was something strong about seeing a family get dirty, make a mess, and still have fun. It wasn't like a Hollywood escape movie. It was a real dad helping his kids figure things out. The people who saw it loved it. There were movies that showed how to cook in the wild or make tarp lodges. Others followed the boys as they slept in makeshift forts or searched for metal in old fields. There were DIY boat projects and attempts to make knives, and there were even funny times when something went horribly wrong. Luke just laughed it off and went with it. Luke wouldn't let go of his first channel, though. He kept going after both catfish and carp at the same time. People who were really into fishing went to that channel to see deep digs into fishing gear, big catches, and pro-level tips. Outside Boys changed into something else. It was about family, adventure, living outside, and sharing stories. It was a calm scene where he caught catfish and carp. Then go back and take a picture of Tommy being proud as he caught his first fish for Outdoor Boys. One movie could be about how to tie a perfect rig. In the next one, Nate might be laughing as he learns to skip stones. There was a different beat on each station. The first was skill. Heart was the other. It was already paying off by the end of 2015 that they chose to start Outdoor Boys. The number of subscribers jumped into the tens of thousands. A lot of people around the world saw kids learn how to make fires or fall in love with nature for the first time. It wasn't about making the show perfect. Luke used his GoPro or any other camera he had. She held the shot some of the time while holding a child on one hip. That didn't matter, though. It might have even made it seem more real. It wasn't long before Outdoor Boys caught up to Catfish and Carp, which had over 1.1 million members. Luke had made something unique, a digital place where families could take a look at themselves, laugh, and maybe even feel like going outside. In 2017, that small hobby had turned into a huge thing. YouTube was going crazy over Outdoor Boys. People were drawn to Luke's calm voice and friendly nature, and soon millions of people knew the whole Nichols family. It took longer than anyone thought to get 1 million members. That play button in gold wasn't just a number. It proved that something magical was going on. A lot of people wanted more. The channel was funny, like when Luke built an igloo with his kids in the snow or when he tried to make a fire with sticks while the boys cheered him on. You learned something from it, but it never felt like a lesson. Luke was also changing. He turned his short clips into long stories that were told with care. There were 30-minute shows and ones that went on for more than an hour. He would canoe through rural lakes in Canada or use only hand tools to build a whole log cabin. It wasn't just where they went or what they built. It was how Luke didn't hide the hard parts, how he felt, and how hard things were for him. Storms would stop them in their tracks. Getting hurt would slow them down. Even so, he kept shooting. He didn't stop. Something big had changed by the end of 2020. Luke had worked as a lawyer for almost 10 years. But now, YouTube was making him more money than his law firm ever had. He made a brave choice that year. After giving up his job as a judge, he started making video full-time. He didn't lose his license, just in case. But it was clear that he belonged in the wild. He said it more simply later. His love of fishing and traveling had grown bigger than his job as a lawyer. He never went back to his suit after getting camping boots. Everything got better once he gave it his all. The videos got bigger and better. Things went more crazy. The boys grew up and became braver. Nate and Luke built a snow fort one winter and slept in it with only a candle. There was another time when he and Tommy got by on a desert island by fishing and eating coconuts. It wasn't a trick. It was honest and raw. They stayed out there for days. They also didn't stay in the area. They went back to Alaska, Luke's home state, and camped out in the middle of nowhere, where bears and moose roamed openly. Luke drove his snow machine 120 miles through the frozen wilderness in early 2024 to get to a remote, off-grid home he had just bought. It took them 4 days to catch game birds, explore frozen rivers, follow dog sled trails, and fish through the ice. He joked that they might not get back without a bush plane. But he said it with a smile on his face. That was the point. It was dangerous. It was true. Luke liked to build things too. He filmed the boys working on big do-it-yourself jobs, like cutting down trees and notching logs to make a real log cabin. He hurt himself in the middle of that one. But he kept shooting anyway. He talked about how he dealt with his pain and kept the homestead project going. That story wasn't just about guns. It had heart. They also didn't stay in America. Luke took his whole family to Down Under. The boys learned how to throw boomerangs and saw animals they had only read about. Tommy walked up to a crocodile in shallow water and looked at it with wide eyes. Luke was only a few feet away and was filming. People held their breath as they watched it happen, but it finished safely. People loved that clip and never forgot about it. It turned into more than just a survival guide or family blog over time. It turned into a sign. Not only did people watch for the thrills, they came to get a feeling. It was watched by whole families. Parents saw how Luke put his kids to work. Kids got to see nature as it really is, without any filters. Everyone learned something too. Luke taught you in a way that made you want to try everything, like how to make memories that will last a lifetime or how to catch fish with a wooden trap you made yourself. By 2023's end, Outdoor Boys wasn't just well known. It was everywhere. They had clips from their movies that went viral on TikTok. A huge number of movies with the hashtag Outdoor Boys got tens of millions of views. Luke was the skinny guy with glasses who made the wilderness look fun and family-friendly. People who hadn't seen the whole show started to recognize him. Then there was the wave. Around 6 million people were following the service by the end of 2023. That number had grown to 15.3 million by May 2025. In just over a year, they got 9 million new fans. That was one of the fastest growing groups on YouTube in its history. At that point, the Outdoor Boys library had more than 500 movies, and fans watched them all in one sitting. It was thought that just one movie, which got 104 million views, could make between $100,000 and $500,000. It turned into a business too. All of the money from sponsorships, products, and side projects added up. The Outdoor Boys name was worth about $4.5 million. Luke was thought to have a net worth of about $9 million. But that didn't seem to bother him at all. You could tell what he really cared about every time he talked to his fans. His religion, his family, and his happiness. Luke Nichols didn't have to leave YouTube, though. He left while he was ahead. When he put out what many people thought was his last Outdoor Boys video in the middle of 2025, the channel wasn't going down. Things were going better than ever. Every day, more and more people watched his films, and they were being watched all over the world. But Luke did something that shocked everyone who had only seen him on TV. He decided to leave behind fame, money, and attention from people all over the world. He wasn't tired of being successful, something else was more important to him. The news spread quickly. It was picked up by news sites in the US, UK, India, and other places. Some people called it a goodbye. Some people said it was a break. Still, the meaning was the same. Luke Nichols cared most about his family and his faith. It wasn't a surprise to people who had been following him for years. Luke was just Luke. Luke didn't cry or make a big deal out of his emotions when he made his statement. But each word was heavy. It wasn't vague when he talked about time, it was very clear and important. He was worn out. A lot of people never saw how long each video took to make. They saw him go camping, do funny things, and build cool things, but they didn't see him edit late at night while his kids slept. Aside from being a parent, they didn't see him working full-time on YouTube. Luke was the face of the station and the stay-at-home dad, and the stress was getting to him. He told her, "Fishing isn't the most important thing in my life. My faith and my family are." That wasn't just a quote. It was a line he was now living by. Then he talked about privacy, something most fans didn't think about. Some strangers had started showing up near his home. They weren't dangerous, but they were uninvited, curious fans, excited viewers. But to Luke, it meant his sons were growing up in a spotlight they didn't choose. He wanted to change that. He said, "There's more than one reason I'm doing this, but I mainly want to focus on my kids. I want to spend more time helping Tommy with his channel and preparing him to be an adult, which is going to be in less than 6 years." In those words, there was a quiet panic, a realization that time was running faster than he thought. Tommy was nearly a teenager already, and in 6 short years, he'd be 18. Luke confessed something else, too. He had spent a lot of time building Outdoor Boys, growing it, perfecting it. But somewhere in that rush, the focus stayed too much on himself. It was time, he said, to start focusing on other people for a change. That shift wasn't just noble. It was deeply personal. And it was backed by something else. All 3 of his sons wanted to make YouTube videos. He chuckled when he said it, but there was truth behind the smile. Tommy was already making his own content on Outdoor Tom. Even young Nate had started showing interest in recording fishing trips. Luke must have known that if he kept pushing Outdoor Boys to bigger heights, his kids might never get their own turn. By stepping back, he wasn't quitting YouTube. He was passing the torch quietly, gently. On his own terms. In the video, he chose his words carefully. He said, "This is going to be my last video for a while. Not goodbye, not farewell, just for a while." That phrasing gave fans hope. And he even mentioned that there were several half-finished videos he might release in a batch later. Homestead updates, camping adventures, travel clips. Maybe he'd share them at the end of the year. Maybe not. He left that door cracked open just enough to keep people wondering. The response from fans was massive. And it wasn't angry. It was grateful. Comments poured in across other platforms because YouTube comments were turned off. Many thanked him for the years of joy. Parents, especially, understood. One message said it best. "Thank you for showing the world what wholesome family fun looks like and for knowing when to put your family first." Some viewers hoped he'd come back someday. Some even refused to believe he was done, but most accepted it with love. In the days that followed, Luke gave a few interviews. He made it clear that this new chapter wasn't about YouTube. It was about being present, being a dad, being a husband, being a follower of Jesus Christ. He said, "Following Jesus Christ made me a better man, husband, and father, and that now he wanted to live that way more fully." He also didn't rule out new ideas. Maybe one day he'd go back to practicing law, or maybe he'd blend his legal skills and outdoor knowledge into something new. Or maybe, and this was the likeliest, he'd just spend more time doing homework with his kids, helping them grow, cheering from the bleachers at Little League, or fishing in the woods with no camera in sight. One thing he was clear about, though: the Outdoor Boys channel would stay up. The videos would remain. The adventures were real, and they'd continue just privately now, without the audience, without the uploads, just life. The way it was meant to be lived. The Nichols family wasn't going dark. They were just stepping away from the stage. As of mid-2025, Luke Nichols was fully out of the spotlight. He had shifted his energy to faith, family, and the wilderness he always loved. Their dream property in Alaska, far from city noise, was becoming their quiet escape. They still kept their home in Virginia, too, where Rebecca continued her career and the boys kept their routines. Luke's focus was entirely on home life now. Tommy's channel was slowly growing with Luke quietly helping behind the scenes. Tommy would be 18 in 2030. By then, he might be a full-fledged YouTuber, maybe even bigger than his dad. Luke might show up once in a while as a guest, but for the most part, he'd be the one holding the camera now, not standing in front of it. Nate and Jacob, the younger two, were getting what their big brother didn't: childhood away from cameras. Just family hikes, backyard fishing, laughter that didn't need likes or comments. That was Luke's gift to them. Financially, Luke was safe. His estimated net worth had crossed $9 million by the time he stepped away. Years of frugal living, smart decisions, and a successful YouTube career gave him the freedom to quit while still on top. He didn't have to chase views anymore. He had already won.